Thank you. I will just say, I try to talk about crime. So they have black and black, they have white on white, they have whatever it is. Just try to talk about crime altogether. Most folks commit crime in proximity to who they are. So I just want to make sure you are correct that we have to talk about the violence that's going on.
Yes, absolutely. Black and white. That's right.
Losing their lives. And next up we have Rebecca Fischer, New York Against Gun Violence. I just want to shout out New York Against Gun Violence as well, because when I first met them, I guess almost over a decade now, they were really focused on mass shootings. And I remember I, as mothers, really pushed the fact that most of the people who are dying, black and brown, around handgun violence and daily violence. And to their credit, they really stepped up and started pushing those issues. So I just want to say thank you to them, and they've been great voices.
Thank you so much to the Public Advocate and also to the Church of the Covenant for hosting this discussion. I have to say also thank you to the other advocates and community leaders who are here today. It's always a privilege for me to be part of these conversations among folks who have been doing this work for so long in their own communities, so thank you for having me. I also can always count on the Public Advocate to host conversations that are going to include folks who do not necessarily all agree. And as I always say, if you're too comfortable in the room, you're not in the right room, you're not gonna actually make any change. So I like to be in rooms where there's uncomfortable conversations happening. I wanna be asked uncomfortable questions. I wanna ask uncomfortable questions because that's how we make change. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this, very much so. So yes, I'm Rebecca Fischer. I'm the Executive Director of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence and New Yorkers Against Gun Violence Education Fund. And the work that we do, we really like to take what I've heard the Public Advocate say many times, a holistic, comprehensive approach to reducing gun violence in our organization. On the one hand, we do policy work. We do policy work here in the city. We do policy work at the town level, at the national level, and we do a lot of work in Albany on legislation and policy and programs. And when I talk about policy, I don't just talk about firearm regulation, although we do work on firearm regulation. We talk about policy change that includes investment in the state and city budget, in community violence intervention programs, in school prevention programs, and also in survivor services. And so that's very much key to our policy agenda and working with community-based organizations on the ground to inform what that policy agenda can be. Because again, policymakers should not be making policy, community should be making policy, community knows what's best for them, and their voice should be heard when it comes to what our legislators and our government officials are doing. In terms of what we do on the community side, we have our signature program, which is called Reaction. It's a school violence prevention program. It also follows the credible messenger model, and we have instructors that are from all around the city, but specifically from communities that are disproportionately impacted, communities, black and brown communities, who understand and have been impacted by them, themselves, by gun violence and violence in their communities, who go into the schools at least once a week, working with young people, not to go into the classroom to tell young people what to do, to tell young people how to feel, but to hear from young people about what they're experiencing, because we strongly believe that they are experts on their own experience. And while they might not know all the laws that are being passed and why what's happening in politics is happening, they do know that they feel powerless in their communities. They do know that they do not feel like they have the resources that they need, and they do understand, even if they don't have the words for it, that gun violence is not just a mental health problem. It's not a mental health problem, it's a public health problem. And there are a number of different factors that contribute to what make it a public health problem. And that doesn't necessarily just go to what's happening in the individual's mind. That has to do with all the different various factors that are happening in the community, in the atmosphere, in our history structurally, that are impacting the way someone's mind evolves, right? And that impacts why a young person or community member might pick up a gun. And I will finally say this before I pass the mic. We do talk a lot about mass shootings at our organization, but we've stopped talking about the mass shootings that always get those national headlines. We're talking about the mass shootings that are happening in black and brown communities here in New York, the ones that are not called mass shootings, but have at least 4 or more people who are injured or are dying from gun violence. And until we start calling those incidents of violence mass shootings, those won't get the same investment, those won't get the same kind of attention from our media. So if we're gonna talk about mass shootings, we should be talking about what's happening in the day-to-day, in the community, and making sure that we're putting resources to respond and give victims and survivors what they need. I, of course, have much more to say, but I will pass the mic to